See, and that's all ours come down here.
Township fill out their ARPA funds last week, and I got all done, and she goes, the board's gonna be so mad at me, and I went.
People see somebody else.
They didn't give her permission. But they only meet like every other month or something.
So, I don't know, not saying.
Well,
we
they had to
pay
have it
dumb
done.
money, but not real dumb money, and we can get it.
Or Steve.
Matt, can you test your audio?
24.
I, for some reason, on a Sunday, I wanted some stuff to build a deer stand base, so we just.
Ryan, are we broadcasting? Matt, can
You're on mute.
I don't have all afternoon to go in.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey, very good.
How are you?
Yeah.
Morning,
I'm hanging in there.
How much longer?
What's that?
How much longer? When do you think you'll be able to come home?
I have no idea.
Okay.
When I asked, I snuck home over the weekend for a day just to get some stuff done because my daughter came down. But Deb can't go home. I asked and they said, no, not even for a day.
Oh, wow.
She has to stay that close, yeah.
October 31st.
So my daughter came down and I ran home and just got some errands done and then came back Sunday morning.
Okay. Well, they're taking good care of Deb, so that's good.
Yeah, well, we have to do what we have to do.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a mic? Deb?
Morning, Terry.
I don't have a mic. He's not gonna
Now
hear
you're
you.
gonna have to sit here all through highway this early.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
So I have continued to send your board packets to you in the mail. Do you want me to not do that until you're back?
Yeah, you can stop. I just do it I'll let you know when otherwise it just sits on my mailbox at home.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to have the hard
I
copy.
can get it online, Deb. That's what I've been doing.
Okay, just let me know when to start up.
What's that?
Just let me know when to start back up.
Okay, yep.
Well, I gotta look at the schedule. I might go over
It's
Wednesday.
gonna be tough. This is gonna be tough.
Well, your appointment. Okay. Oh, yeah, that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
So. He likely needs some still.
Wednesday, Thursday, both?
So, no, we're not buying any ARs or anything.
Yeah,
Feel like in town here, we run 80.
that's like 3 weeks from now for me, you know. I need to know tomorrow
Not that.
what I'm doing. I'm planning on going Wednesday,
It's kind of.
coming back. My appointment is in St. Cloud,
Oh,
so I'll come back to that and then
Like
I'll
up there.
come back to,
Just close them all.
Okay.
that's my plan.
So, yeah. So then I have a hotel room for that Wednesday night. And so we were just trying to figure out if, yeah. So,
I'm glad you're right.
oh, it didn't seem like it was a problem at all.
Oh. Look at the back of the crowd.
Oh.
A lot of people going today, yeah.
Yes.
It's like 5 miles maybe, which I think is kind of the norm. You know, when I did some searching, it seemed like all of them were. Yeah.
I forget if they're saying in our city. The county.
I can get them, David. We'll get started here with this.
Yeah, they should be able to.
Okay, Matt, are you hearing us? We'll get started with the special board meeting of the Committee of the Whole. And Pine County Commissioner Matt Ludwig will be attending the meeting, special meeting of the Committee of the Whole today at 9 o'clock via interactive technology pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.02. Commissioner Ludwig will be seen and heard from the meeting by electronic means and will participate from Staybridge Suites 2350, Commerce Drive, Northwest Rochester, a location open and accessible to the public. And the public is always invited to join these meetings remotely. If you're hearing me, you've already done that. So we will call the meeting to order and we'll rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, we do have some additional information for the agenda, and there's some information on probation and then also a levy impact spreadsheet.
Okay. And right off the bat, we're gonna jump ahead because Pete Leibel just called me. Many of you know his dad, Bob, like about 92. Was able to make it to the fair this year, contract, even though he's double vaccinated. Came down with COVID. Looked like last week he was doing better, but Pete just called to the hospital now and things don't look good, so he will not be here. So remember Bob and that family. So Mark, we'll move on to highway.
Last night. Right.
The agenda.
Oh, yes, we do, ma'am. Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make it.
A second.
Motion by Waldham, second by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, Debbie, call the roll.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lopez. Aye. District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll just warn Mark that if he doesn't speak into the mic, Matt will call him on it.
Okay, can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah.
Sure. So we are looking for some additional money this year. It's more than I want to ask for, but I guess it's a catch-up year for us. Looking for about 37,000 for building maintenance, and that's mostly due to the loss of revenue from the old courthouse. And then additional 200,000 for highway, and that is really on our fleet side. So 100,000 for vehicle purchase, 100,000 vehicle and equipment maintenance. We've got 32 full-time positions budgeted, so 29 for highway, 3 for building. We're down a couple positions in the last year or two, but this is kind of our baseline number of employees. I really wouldn't want to cut back on that, so.
Is that sustainable, Mark? To be down, is that gonna be,
Well,
is that the new norm?
We're
or-
down technically another position right now, but we're planning on filling one of those. So we will be fully staffed to where we want to be. The 3 in building maintenance is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
if we had 4, I don't know. It's one, if we lose somebody, it's gonna be tough, but I think we're all right. We're not overstaffed, and which, we don't want to be overstaffed, so. But I'm comfortable with where we're at right now with what's going on. I guess that's how I could summarize it, so if that makes sense. So with 100,000 of that fleet money, our equipment budget would be 770,000. And the sheriff is asking for 6 squads a year to be replaced. Right now, we're doing 5. We're trying to get them out the door at about 100,000. the way they operate the vehicles obviously is different than, well, not different than my wife, but different than most of us. So they don't necessarily want them out there and having brakes fail or, engine blowing up and things like that. So that's 50 grand, for a squad and to outfit it. And then we're looking at a couple extra fleet vehicles for Kelly's side. She's got assessor and zoning, trying to cycle out some of her older vehicles. They're also the jail. So we're looking at next couple of years, a couple extra fleet vehicles, so we could reevaluate where we're at then. And, we used to buy 2 tandem trucks a year when when things were a little cheaper. Now we're 1 tandem truck or 1 motor patrol. So, things are tired. Things just cost more money. And so we don't have to provide vehicles for all the staff that want them. I mean, that isn't an obligation, but I think it's something that we should continue to do and continue to provide a decent vehicle, especially for a lot of the, like the assessors do a lot of driving, zoning staff does a lot of driving. So I think that's important. Our construction budget is going to be over 9 million, which is a big year for us. So there are some additional expenses that come with that. And then we're asking to continue to put 25,000 a year into that building fund. It's I guess it's easy to not do that, but I think just having a habit of putting something in there, we're building up some money over time. So I would project this building will need a roof, in the next 5 years. Maybe there'll be money for that in there, so we won't have to raise the levy at that time. So we're kind of just, I don't have a specific project in mind, but it is just, I believe there's 10,000 a year still going in there from the city of Sandstone. I did. So
Yeah, from the sale of the John Wright
Yeah.
building, and that was like a 10-year.
I can't remember. I must have been probably 100. Yeah. So that'll be going in there for a while. We used to put 75 in there. But we do have those bond funds that we're using to try to catch up on some things this year. So I think we're fine. But if we get out of the habit of not putting anything in there, then, it's hard to get that money budgeted back in. So when we look at the line items, on building maintenance, it's in your packet there. You can see our rental revenues down about 45,000. And that's just mostly with the courthouse, the old courthouse going back to the city. The good news is if you go down to the utilities, we're gonna save. Obviously, we're not gonna be paying any utilities for the old courthouse, and it's probably about $25,000 we're saving there every year. And then we're just generally, this last year and a half or two, we've seen our utility use down, and the jail's got a lot less people in it. There's less public in the building. There's less employees in all our buildings. So I am projecting some savings into 2022. So I think next year we'll really kind of see where we're going to be at. So I'm not exactly sure how much we're going to save beyond that, but I think we'll have a good idea after next year. The other big change in building maintenance is we went to contract cleaning. So we did have 4 staff 2 years ago. This year, 2021, we didn't fill a vacant position and went with contract cleaning to see how that would work. And I think it's really worked well. Pete's real happy with it. The nice thing is when, if we have an employee doing it, if they're on vacation or holidays, we got to cover for that employee somehow. So it just puts an added burden on Pete and his guys. So I think we've had some mostly positive feedback on the cleaning service. That.
Is that a local firm?
Yeah. I think that's Amy Den's.
Okay.
And that's been running 4,000 a month this year. So that's 48 grand. Now with the elimination of the STS crew, there'll be some impact on our staff. We'll be doing the landscaping, mowing and things. So they might have to cut back on some of the cleaning they do. So I added 10,000 in there to cover that, but I don't know if that's gonna be the case, if we're gonna need that money, but I thought we should budget it just in case, until we get an idea of how much time that's gonna be. So overall, about a 6% increase in building maintenance. And I think 2023, some of this is kind of a one-time hit. I don't think you'll see much of a increase in the future years, so not as bad, I think, as Kelly thought it was gonna be. I don't think so. That's always good to slip it by Kelly. So we go to highway, administration is 310. We didn't really change much in there, just our, the salary benefits increase. We added 500 for conferences. I do have a licensed assistant now, so he needs to keep his license up. So there's a conference that allows us to do that. So overall, 2.4% increase under administration division, which, if we can keep it under 3 or around 2, we're pretty happy with that. So on the engineering side, that's 320. You can see on the salaries there, we are filling a current vacant position, so we will be staffed back up. That's about a 10% increase. So the other big thing is our construction line item. You can see that's 9.25 million. That is really what drives our overall budget. So from year to year, you might see our budget go up 3 million or down 5 million or up 2 million. So it's a little different than most of the other budgets. So it's really not, when we do the construction, there's a corresponding revenue from state aid typically, or federal aid, or now we have the sales tax. So that's what drives our big overall number. And you can see professional services, that's going to go up a little bit when we got more construction going on. We've got a materials testing, we got an inspection at this is made. There's some additional design. We got two culverts and a bridge. So there's some design help we get on some of those. So that number drives up, but that's all reimbursable expenses for state aid if we need to do that. So, if that number goes higher, then the reimbursement goes higher. So overall, almost a 50% increase in engineering, but it's pretty much reimbursable expenses there. On 330, our maintenance side, it didn't change much. There's 3 line items that are going up. Our rental agreements, our aggregates, and our culverts, and we had to cut those back this year. We lost the state aid, and so those are a lot of the activities we do in the summer. Our rental agreement is basically track hose, belly dumps, dozer, those types of equipment, and so we just had to cut back on some of that this year. But the graveling, we try to put out 30,000 to 35,000 yards of gravel each year. And then our culverts, a lot of that is centerline culverts that we replace before we do paving, driveway culverts, all those culverts all over the whole county. And so we're going to be able to reimburse or remove those cuts from this year and add back into where we were in 2020. So I anticipate our state aid revenues to be back to where we were. We didn't get ahead, but kind of back to where we were a couple of years ago. So that's I looked at that as positive news. So a 7.5% increase, but really it's just spending the additional revenue that we're going to get for maintenance. So on the fleet, 340. Really the two big changes there. If you go down to 65 repair services, just been watching that the last few years, and it's been running around 200,000. Sometimes it's over, sometimes it's a little under. So all that any repair work that we're not doing in-house, all kinds of things with the squads. They're all SUVs now, you know, everything on that's more expensive. If we have accidents, there's repair work, there's our major pieces of equipment. Sometimes, you know, there's damage to that, or it's, you know, a major transmission, or we do repair, a lot of our dump boxes on our tandems rust out. So we do refurbish them because the trucks are in good condition, you know, so we do maybe spend a little bit more in this line. But I think it's better than just going out and buying brand new equipment every time something's rusty. I know Matt was complaining about a couple of our pickups didn't look too good, so we're getting rid of them, Matt, so you won't see them around, hopefully, if you're there. And then on the major equipment, I mean, if we get 770,000, like I said, we can help Kelly out a little bit, and we can keep the sheriff's fleet in really good shape. Typically, we're doing, you know, 5 squads and then 2 non-marked vehicles for the sheriff. We're starting to catch up with his stuff, so we're seeing some progress there, but that's been at the expense of probably zoning and assessor, jail. But so it kind of goes in cycles, and you know, we're getting behind kind of on our tandem truck, so we're gonna be buying a tandem truck now every year for the next probably 4 or 5 years. So
I think I will just reiterate, probably, I think I've said it before, but several years ago, we moved all the squad cars and the department cars to fleet management. And that's worked wonderfully. The side that hasn't worked so wonderfully, probably for Mark, is we didn't slide a corresponding amount of money to that to cover the cost of those vehicles. So I think Mark he's made it work, but he's made it work at the expense of maybe getting behind on a tandem truck here and there and that kind of stuff. So I think we have to keep, you know, it balanced the sheriff's budget. It makes it easier to manage on that side. We got to remember the other side. We can't take away from one department to pay off another.
Mr. Chair, the other thing, I know we talk about this like every year, but I hear a lot of counties going to, what is it, like enterprise or something.
lease,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know you, not that I'm advocating for it at all, but because I think you do a great job running that and keep the costs extremely low. And but I don't know, do you ever see it paying off going that route or not?
Yeah, we talked with the sheriff a few times about it. I mean, you know, it's no different than if you lease a personal vehicle, really. You, is it gonna cost more in the end? Yeah. Do you get a better service? Maybe. A lot of things that you would take advantage with a lease, you know, we've got mechanic, we do repair work in-house, not everything. We have fuel. So a lot of those leases are set up where it's just you just push a button and they take care of everything, you know? So a lot of things that we're set up to do now and have invested money in, we wouldn't need anymore. So there's kind of we need, you know, we still have to have that for our other side operations or, you know, our heavy equipment and that type of thing. So, you know, I don't think the leasing is bad. I just think it's, you know, you're paying for a service and they have to make profit, you know. We don't.
No.
I don't think we do. We're nonprofit, aren't we? So, yeah, I mean, I know there's some, I don't know if Chisago, maybe Isani, there's some counties around that are similar. The difference for us though is the mileage that we put on. So it's like, if you lease a vehicle and you only drive 10,000 miles a year, it might be fantastic for you. But if you drive 30,000 a year, it isn't going to work out, you know? And so we've got such a big county compared to some of them other ones. We're putting so many miles on the vehicles that, you know, I think that's the difference for us is we've got so much territory to cover. So, but it's certainly an option to keep out there, I think, over time, you know?
Yeah, I was talking to Sean when we had them floods up north and he said in 2 or 3 days, or I don't know, you put over 2 or 3,000 miles on
Yeah,
one of the trucks just in Pine County.
Yeah.
yeah, it's,
It's,
so
I
our
think,
miles just on our roads, I mean, and them squads are
Oh,
covering
yeah.
huge areas up north especially,
No, and I, like Steve said, you guys do a great job, and I just always hear that, and it's like, well, I don't hear you saying that that's a way we should go yet or whatever.
I don't
so-
think we should go that way at this point, but I mean, I'm not saying at some point, maybe it would make sense. But
Yeah.
I think the mileage thing is a big issue we would have, so.
Thanks.
Yep. So if you look at our bottom line fleet services, it's about 2.1 million. And then when you go over here now to the revenue side, what you'll see is our property tax levy kind of lines up pretty close every year with our fleet services, because most of, it's about 15% of our total budget is our levy. It, goes up and down a little bit of that percentage, but the rest of it, most of our department, we can get reimbursed through our state aid in one way or the other, or federal aid, or through the sales tax for the project. So you really kind of see that fleet number is really where our levy dollars are going. So for the most part. The other change we made on the revenue is we consolidated into permit fees, 5101, all our different, any type of permit is going to be under there. We started charging for permits, utility permits and some other permits a year or two ago, and it's worked really well. I mean, like when we have a paving project, contractors are moving in their plant and they need a overweight permit. And so we usually get a couple grand just when they move in and a couple grand when they leave out, and they're used to it. So I mean, we may as well, take advantage of that. We gotta do a permit. There's work that we gotta do in our office. And so we're getting that reimbursed now. So I think that was a positive. You see our regular construction and municipal construction are up, and that's just correlates with the project. So as long as we got money in our account, we get that money once we let the contract. And our municipal maintenance, I'm projecting it'll go back up 8%. So I think we're pretty safe on that. The other main item is down at the bottom. You see transfers out. I guess it should say maybe transfers in and out. And that's our sales tax. So some years we spend less than we collect, and some years we spend more than we collect. And so to balance out our budget, we set aside in some years, like last year, we set aside whatever, 600,000 into our sales tax account. So it's just something we keep track of. There's no official separate account on that. And so in 2022 now, we're gonna spend 2.3 million. So we're gonna draw back out of that account. But if we don't show that in and out, then it's gonna look like we have a deficit of 1.1 million, or we have a surplus of 595,000. So I've talked over with Kelly. She's had a few questions on my budget, and it's just one of those things. That's what I came up with. So if Kelly's, she's got some better, that's great. If there's some other better way to do it, but in my mind, that's how I keep track of it. And then David doesn't say, why do you have a $1.1 million deficit? So a little over $15 million budget, and it's gonna be a big year, but we're looking forward to getting some of these projects done. So any other questions?
If we go back to construction,
Yeah.
and you got a big year coming.
Yeah.
Are you able to find help to help our crew with like inspections and stuff? So those.
Yeah.
guys can-
Yeah, one of the positions that we didn't replace is he did the plant monitoring, and then like when we do bituminous paving, we have to do density testing and those types of things. And so we're able to hire a consultant to do that. And it's not cheap, but it's cheaper than having somebody year round, you know, it's probably half the cost of having a year round employee, but it's, you know, so you do lose some benefit of a year round employee, but you also save money by not employing someone that there's times you maybe don't need, you know, so it's worked out well so far. We'll get that extra position for next year, and I think.
Well, the nice thing about it, doing it that way is that if you have a down year, then you don't hire the person as much. So.
Yeah, so most of the counties are kind of moving in that direction where instead of the state and the counties and the cities and the consultants fighting for the same people, we're working together so that, you know, we don't have to pay more. I mean, our techs now, I mean, it's $100,000 for all the benefits and the pay, and it isn't 50,000 anymore like it was, you know, 10 years ago. So we got to take a step back and say, what can we get? If we're going to pay that much money, you know, what can that person do? Do we even have quality people out there? And because we're fighting to get the small group of people that are qualified. So we're drawn from the consultants. We do have a consultant that helps with our bridge inspections now. I think that's usually about 20,000 a year. So we're doing a little bit of that rather than just adding staff. And then we kind of monitor it and see, does it make sense, you know, from year to year? So that's kind of where we're at. And I know this year was the tightest. We were down one that we're going to fill. So this year was probably the tough year to get through. So.
Any other questions for Mark?
Yeah, I got a couple. Three. What's, do you have, I couldn't find it on here unless I overlooked it, the building fund balance, the current balance, what you've got.
I don't know, what is it, Kelly?
Let me pull it up.
It was a few years ago, we used to put 100 grand a year in it, right?
I thought it was 75.
75 was the
Yeah.
75, okay. Did we do anything
It was
last
100 in the technology
year? Okay.
and 75 in the building.
Building.
Yeah, so we got that 800,000 from the refinance, and that really kind of is taking care of some of the things that we were gonna do.
So as of 12/31, the number. Wrong sheet.
How long is the snow plowing contract for the buildings? Hotel.
In another year, maybe?
Do you know, Debbie? I don't know offhand for sure.
That last year it got re-upped for 2 years. Hate to think about snow.
I do.
It's pretty coming quick.
Yeah,
Do you have a contract for snow plowing where?
Spring will be here before you know
this
it.
parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's I think it was about. Which was it? Let's see here.
Inter building maintenance, right? Would it?
18. I think if it's 36 or it's 18.
Oh,
Yeah. It's a 2-year contract.
yeah.
So the building fund. Fund balance.
Where's Pete when you need him? Vegas.
It's
He's in Vegas right now.
gonna balance the budget.
Yeah, he's.
The building fund currently has a balance of 313,943.
Oh, good.
And so that really got a boost from the solid waste commission, sent that almost $200,000 last year
Oh, yes.
of their capital contribution return that we put in there.
Okay.
So we got a real nice boost last year.
So we're sitting pretty good there. Cause I mean, the projects that I'm thinking of, you know, they're maybe 100,000 or 50,000 here and there, you know. We're not gonna build a new building, you know, so.
And I was just curious, another question. Line item 65, 68, the diesel tax. Doesn't it usually just come right off of your, or is it tax?
The what now?
Diesel tax?
No, I think we pay that like quarterly.
This doesn't, it was registered 49.
Well, we're different because we're a government entity. So we don't, I mean, we buy in bulk. And then we probably, I think we report the gallons and then pay the state tax of some kind.
Okay.
Follow up with Mark on
My
it.
last question, is there anything like COVID caused, think of that if it wasn't for
Well,
the mess we had?
I just got an email from all the other counties because they're like ticked off that
Yeah,
the counties are viewing, just like our county, that we're not eligible for reimbursement for last year's reduction in our state aid, which was directly from COVID. And so there's some counties now that are looking at it from a different point of view that it should qualify.
Right.
So that would be the only thing for us.
Have you had any, not to
So I'm sure Kelly's getting the same information that all the other, David from the other counties of. That was really the interpretation statewide, is that money is not eligible to be reimbursed because you have to look at the whole county as a whole.
Mhm.
So where that goes, if that changes, I don't know, but that would be the one thing that was directly related to COVID. Otherwise, we didn't, other than hand sanitizer and masks, I mean, I don't think we had really anything.
You need any more hand sanitizer?
We're probably gonna need some again, now it looks like, doesn't it? Hopefully we didn't throw the masks away and
We still have a cupboard full, so.
Got a pallet
you down at the fair.
at the fair, we got a pallet.
I know we got some from Walmart too, but. Yeah, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, that it? All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Just to recap, because your detail doesn't show this, but if you look only at the net and highway, right? All you're adding is that $200,000, the 100 for maintenance and the 100 for acquisition of vehicles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
everything
so
else is covered.
if you don't wanna, if you're gonna take some of that away, we would probably first just buy less vehicles if we gotta not buy an extra squad or buy one less vehicle. I mean, that's probably the first approach you would take. And then if there's, if we don't get anything, we'll probably have to cut back maintenance or revenue or something. So, I mean, we're not gonna be in dire straits, but I think we really haven't had a big increase under that fleet side for quite a while, and so I would anticipate, like I said, for building maintenance and highway in 2023, that we would really not have much of a request at all. Typically, we've kind of been every other year that we come in and look for a little bit more. So 2023 would be a good year to come in and do my budget.
So would it make sense to do what Kelly's doing, with the election stuff, and just start doing so much every year so that it's not up and down and up and down?
Well, we are, but there ain't enough money to do that.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing like 4 fleet vehicles a year, but we got highway, we got jail, we got some others that cycle out with a lot more miles. Kelly's group got caught with a couple bad vehicles, and unless somebody comes to me and says, this vehicle's really, really crap, which they did at a certain point, a couple employees said, I'm not driving this anymore. So then we scramble. We don't want to be in that situation. So I think a couple extra vehicles will help us stay where we want to be. And we might not have to keep that amount. We might not have to keep 6 a year. Maybe we can get back down to 4 or 5 every year. And I think for the most part, but we've added staff, in some of those areas. And so there's a need. So that, that's probably part of it, is that when we added staff, we didn't add a vehicle. So we just had another used one come in, so there's some of that. So I expect that's going to level off too. So.
Yeah, and just specifically for 2022, at this point, we've added a sergeant in the sheriff's office that generates increase in the fleet size. And on the assessor side, based on the number of contracts that we're expanding to, there's another staff person programmed, and so that translates to another vehicle. So all of those decisions have the impact of trying to stretch that fleet budget further and further to the point where it needs to be expanded in order to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when, I don't know, the assessors didn't even use county vehicles, so there's
remember
5
that
right
day too.
there.
Okay, you probably drove your own when you were an assessor,
You
huh?
know,
Darn mileage.
zoning, we maybe had 2 people that were in the field, and now I think we got 4 or 5 even maybe, so we just have never caught up. I mean, I think we kind of know where we should be, but I don't want to come in and ask for $200,000. I really don't, but just kind of at that point now where it's probably makes sense to do that.
Doesn't mean it's gonna be easy.
No,
Because that's where the, that $1.4 million is made up of these chunks of $100,000 and $200,000.
yes. So that's, I'm laying that out there. If we don't get that, we will adjust. We gotta adjust, so.
You make that sound really easy. Mark. You shouldn't make it sound so easy. We'll just.
Well, I mean, they gotta
Kelly's
make
going,
tough
"No, I need my car."
decisions and, if I don't get the money, I don't get the money. I'm not gonna go cry anymore.
I
All right.
might.
Go to go to the auction and buy some used ones.
No,
Are those the ones that went bad?
Yeah, no, and then
I think,
the whole equipment, sorry, Steve, the whole equipment thing is, I look out 5 years, but after the first year, it's already changed. And so it isn't, we do not wanna, I mean, some counties, they just have a cycle, but they're gonna just replace a vehicle so many years, boom, 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 boom. Whether it's a good vehicle or not, and if it's meeting our needs, we're not gonna replace it, And so that's part of it, where it's not a exact formula, but we definitely, I know there's definitely a couple vehicles that should have been, out. Some of my staff's gotta pay a little bit closer attention to some of that, because not everybody's gonna speak up, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Good luck.
thanks,
Come on
Mark.
back if you want.
Harry, you're next.
It's entertaining. I come to the table, David leaves.
Yep. Hurry up.
You want me to start?
Yep, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I thought I would start off, you guys all have a copy of the narrative, right? I'll start off with the bulleted items first. It kind of just tells a little bit of a story. We can get into some line items if you have some questions, but as you know, the correction system in Minnesota is unique. And so one of the big unique pieces of that is around funding. And so most people are committee with the delivery systems and facilitated by the council and state governments to try that in the future. And so we're supposed to have thanks, man. Supposed to have a recommendation into the legislature December 15th. So we'll see what comes of that. But the way our CPO, County Probation Office formula works now is you're supposed to get up to 50% reimbursement, or 50% reimbursement is what it really says. And we haven't gotten that since 1996. It's usually about 29%. Was it 30 or 29% this year, Kelly? But I project a little bit lower because of that, because it's a moving target, never really know what we're going to get in. And so we got 168,000 in this year. It helps, but it's nothing close to what the state should be obligated to pay. Local corrections fees, there's statute that says we can assess corrections fees. Some people commonly call them probation fees. It's really not a fee to be on probation. It's fee for service type. That was put in a statute 20 years ago or so. Our agents do a good job of collecting that money. That helps. It really ends up paying at least a good portion of a salary. And last year they collected $52,000. Already at 72% of that this year. According to Kelly's math, new levy dollars of probation this year would cost about $76,556, which is $57,931 salary and benefits. 2022 would be the first year that the juvenile electronic monitoring line item would be moved from Becky's budget to mine. That's $13,000. It's an easier accounting piece for Becky's folks as well as mine. We're the ones that use it. But it's money well spent. Electronic monitoring keeps kids out of detention. And we save a lot of bed dollars every year. And you hear that when I give that annual report, keeping a kid in the monitor in the community. And so that $13,000 increases my budget slightly. But again, there's really a big cost savings to that in the long run. A few years ago, we increased the line item for training to what it's at now, $6,450. We really kind of get that offset with the money we make from our DWI program, our COG skills programming and driving with care level 2 programming. We've been able to really do some good stuff for staff. The PIC counties collaborate on a lot of training as it is. And so we're able to go to a lot of no cost training through either the PIC or the DOC. But we have supported obviously our own conference. We have a good number of our staff going to the macro conference here in a couple of weeks. And I just got a staff that just came back from the National American Probation and Parole Association conference. Those are obviously big perks for staff and I think goes a long way in terms of them wanting to stick around. I work with Becky every year to look at what we should allocate for out-of-home placement. We were allocating less and less, I think, every year now for security detention. Put 110,000 in that for this coming year, and more money for non-secure placement opportunities, 170,000. So this is really again in line with our mission of Project Rise and trying to keep kids in our community and more use of our evening reporting center. So our budgetary increases for 2022, really personnel. The good side of that is the stability in the office and the dedication of the staff. In 2019, we came over from the state system and over to the county, and then worked with David and kind of figured out where probation made sense to fit in all that. And we have 2 career agents in the office. One of them is really kind of grandmothered in from the old system, from the state system. And so we won't have the other career agent, for example, at the high end will never make the amount that the other one's making right now. And so, but the good thing is we haven't had turnover in probation officers here for 3 years, I think. In my first couple of years here, we were going through a few of them like hotcakes. And so, and it used to be where we would come in and talk to the board and say, we're training people up for the metro, and then they're going to the metro when they get enough experience. That doesn't happen anymore. It's people like working here in Pine County. Also the board's, take on supporting, virtual opportunities and telework has been a big thing for personnel. So it may cost a little bit more in salaries and benefits. We're seeing the product, rather than having to train a young agent all the time that doesn't have any experience, comes right out of college. Now we're getting some veteran agents that not only are really good at their job, but they're also have been really visible around the state through statewide committees and initiatives. So I take pride in that. We have a caseload workload grant that we get through the DOC that pays just about $60,000 towards one position. That was just renewed for another couple of years. We continue to tell them that that's not enough, but they don't allow us to ask for more money on that to kind of freeze that amount. But again, hopefully into next year, we'll start to have a better way of doing things in terms of formulas and money. But We have a line item in here for community alternatives. We got a couple of years ago, $14,000. It's been underutilized. COVID was a big hit to that. It really, I think, is one of the unique things in Pine County, especially, you know, with our Project Rise work. It allows us, and I have a little story there where, you know, I supervise our habitual truants, and I have a girl who largely is raising herself. And she kind of has popped around, you know, at least 3 of the 4 school districts. And a barrier to her has always been getting, like, you know, she's going to go to Empower at Hinckley. How is she going to get there? And so this line item, for example, has allowed us to buy gas cards. And so the deal was, if you make academic progress, you can come in and then get a gas card. And so that helps for whoever's giving her rides to make sure she's making it to school. If she doesn't go to school, she doesn't get a gas card. I asked her in court one day, you know, would you ever want your driver's license? And she said, yeah. I said, well, what about if probation paid for it? And she cried, and she actually followed through. She followed through on her own, just called me last week or texted me last week and said, Terry, I got my permit. You know, this kid would have never got her permit. Right. And so those are the kind of the hidden stories that you don't always get to hear about. But a line item such as that, you know, helps offset and pay for some of that stuff. We'll have another one where I think an adult client needed birth certificate or whatever. And some of these people just don't have any money. And, you know, our juveniles, you know, even less. So, so that's been good. You know, I've been encouraging the agents to do more with that. But so again, you know, hopefully as the world hopefully gets back a little bit closer to normal, we can use more of that funding. But just having it there has been a blessing. So we have underutilized restitution community service where kids can, it's kind of a fund for when a juvenile gets assessed restitution. We can set up community service for them and then draw from that fund to help pay for that. We have, I think, 1 or 2 kids doing that as we speak. And so that's been good for enable a juvenile who truly doesn't have the funding to try to pay off some of that restitution that they owe. And then transportation, juvenile services, we also have 1,000 in there. That hasn't been utilized a lot, obviously, because of COVID, but it's been important to, you know, if a kid needs a ride somewhere or whatever, that we're able to draw from something. And I think initially when Kevin Glass set that up, he kind of had talked to Becky on how they do that in HHS. And so just an opportunity for us to help out those that don't have any rides. We have 3,000 in our office safety supplies budget. We replaced 2 vests this year. We're going to, our vests were aging out, so we needed to replace them anyway. And so we started with our high risk adult agents, and they both are getting new vests first, and they're able to get vests that fit them. So they got fitted for those. And so rather than just having the big clumpy vests that aren't always so mobile or agile. So OC spray, we just had to replace all our OC canisters and then search gloves for agents that wanted protective search gloves, so you're not digging into something that can hurt you. So so that's kind of general overview. Staffing, again, we have 10 staff total and then 2 contract staff with the evening reporting center. The DOC runs what they call a new agent formula. That was just handed to us several months ago. Pine County is still technically 1 agent down. But I'm not asking for an agent. We don't, we're fine. We have our biggest stressor in terms of caseloads continues to be our pretrial work. There's just a lot of pretrial cases that, and they've had for quite a while, especially with the slowdown system. For quite a while. And so I think we might have 1 or 2 high profile cases on right now. But again, it's, you know, roll up our sleeves and we'll deal with it. Sometimes, you know, it ebbs and flows. So have some agents kind of doing double duty between juvenile work and adult work by necessity. And so when our juvenile numbers are down, they're hopping over and adult agents that are kind of a little bit overworked, so we'll make do there. So with that, I'd open up for questions, or if you have any specific line item you want to ask about, or
OC spray.
pepper spray for lab. Yeah, it's a really long word that's about 18 letters long, and I don't know how to pronounce it.
I assume the vests are they like bulletproof vests?
Yeah. So we use Strikers, which is I think the same outfit that probably the sheriff's department uses, but they're out of Plymouth.
Thank you.
I know, Terry, you like tracking data. Do we have enough years of data to see that the interventions we've been doing starting to pay off? Are there trends?
Well, we just had our first Project Rise committee meeting yesterday morning for the first time in probably a year and a half. And so hopefully people able and probation now is taking that over to chair that. Andy Olmos of East Central was chairing it, and the superintendents are just, day to day, not knowing what next step is for them. So I just said, hey, we'll take it over. That way we continue this. That'll be a quarterly meeting. And so that's your question. Like some of those, like the truancy stuff, that's where we would collect that data. And I think that's one of the things that we're looking to put in this year's comp plan is that truancy data. So, a few years ago, we were able to track that really well. And that's partly how we got that Capstone of the Year award, was the truancy numbers went down dramatically. We have to get back to that now. And then the evening reporting center is tracking data separate. So I think I'm not certain that we're there yet.
Any other questions? Matt, you got any? He left.
So maybe just point out that when you see like when you see like Mark and Becky present their budgets, and they have a big enough budget and enough non-levy revenue sources that they can usually finesse the levy increase to be pretty minimal or directed towards real specific things. When you have a department like Terry does, all of those inflationary increases, health insurance, salaries and wages, they really just compound on the net, which is about 76,000 on years this year. And there's not a whole lot of maneuver room to I'll say hide that or to pay that with other sources. It really is just a general fund tax levy impact.
Yeah, good point. And like I said, why I try to paint that picture every year is, there's certainly some areas where you can look at cutting, but for the overall, big picture and mission of what probation is trying to do, does it just put you behind later, and that's why I've always appreciated the board's support and understanding that, and this is some of my, I shake my head about every time I go to one of these joint meetings that's CSG's governing is, everybody wants to talk. I sent David the minutes yesterday, and just an example, the juvenile services isn't part of what they're looking at measuring. And so that's obviously near and dear to CPO, near and dear to everything. If you on the front end, you don't have to deal with them. Talk about when you're talking with the big dogs of the corrections world, they just kind of want to talk about dollars and cents and high risk and parolees and those type of things. And we forget about what we probably all came into this business for, was to help people and to help kids in particular. And I think that gets lost in the conversation. So kind of the same thing with our local budget here is, we could cut and save 20, 30, $40,000 somewhere. but then you have more kids that are in placement potentially because we're taking away opportunities on the front end.
Thank you. Anything? Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Easy. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I will be presenting today on the 061 budget and the Fund 43 Technology Fund, but we'll start with the 061. I do have a couple sheets in your packet. One is just the breakdown of line items and the other one is just kind of a quick overview. So I'll read through that quick. Please stop me at any point if you guys have questions. So 3 main spending areas of IT. We have personnel for 4 staff, services and maintenance, and hardware and software. In past years, these have been roughly the same, around the 30-35%. This year, we kind of moved some stuff into the correct line items, and this is kind of how it's now breaking down. Where our services and maintenance is our highest cost in our department at 46%. Hardware and software is behind that at 14%. So we do operate out of the general fund. HHS and Public Works do pay for their computers. And we do have some departments that pay for their own software and maintenance, specifically sheriff, jail, attorney, recorder. So this is not an entirely inclusive technology budget for the entire county. But we can go through the increases quick. 6262 services and computers has a 73% increase over 2021. That is due to the recorder compliance funds we're paying for part of the MCCC membership. The Recorder's Compliance Fund will need to be moving forward to pay for the new tax and canvas system from Tyler. So we were able to remove that from the IT's budget for, I believe, 2 years, Kelly. And now that needs to kind of come back. So it was budgeted. We were able to leverage those other funds. Now it's back for this year. In 6311 repair and maintenance, we have an 81% increase, but it's really not that much of an increase because all we did was move our Office 365, which is 109,000 a year, to this line item from the 6660 equipment and furniture fund. So that's really not an increase that was already budgeted. We just moved that to a different line item, which kind of messes with the numbers. So for the decreases, obviously, since we moved that 109,000 out of 6660, we have a 26% decrease. But the big increase in that, which is why it's not $100,000 decrease, is the computers that needed to be added. We were able to leverage CARES funds last year and this year, so we didn't budget for any computers this year. So now we need to budget for them again. So we were budgeting about half desktops, half laptops, and we were getting desktops for about $600. So we're able to get them for a relatively good price. We buy off of the state contract and the volume purchasing, so we're able to get a ridiculous deal on computer hardware. However, with COVID and everything else, we're no longer buying desktops if we can. The only departments that will have desktops moving forward will be the sheriff and jail. They have deputy stations here at each district, and then the jail obviously has them in the jail at specific stations, so laptops don't make much sense. However, with CPU shortages, supply chain issues, everybody else wanting laptops, the cost of all of that has increased significantly. So whereas we were getting $600 desktops and $900 laptops, now we're not buying the desktops and the laptops are $1,200 and the docks are $300. So we kind of have this like double effect of all of these things that just kind of makes that cost go out of control. Because I believe we were budgeting about 40 to 45,000 and now it'll be 70. So that's kind of the main increases. The only other two significant ones that I wasn't able to kind of balance out with other things in the budget was $11,000 increase from the state for our internet and security and a $6,000 increase in the AS400 maintenance. We had bought that brand new 3 years ago. And we bought 3 years worth of maintenance with it, assuming that we would be on track with the new tax and camera system before that time happened, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we are not, so we'll have to continue paying for the maintenance starting in August of next year. So that is kind of a high level overview of the entire budget, which comes out to an increase of 160,000 or at 21% over 2021. So it's kind of unfortunate that we have both MCCC and the computers that come back into the budget at the same time, which kind of makes up a huge amount of that. So in 2021, we did have a 0 flat increase over 2020, which we were able to budget with not buying computers and some other things that Kelly was able to help with. So we are able to leverage other funds. The Recorder Technology Fund is going to pay for roughly 135,000 worth of data center hardware and building UPS units. For ARPA funds, we have no current plans because we did leverage a lot of money out of the CARES Act in 2020 for laptops, AV equipment, firewalls, teleworking solutions across the board. And so that would bring me into the technology fund if we want to just quick overview that, and then we can stop for questions.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Especially the computers.
Mhm.
Wouldn't they be ARPA eligible? Or is that gray area?
To me, we could probably, we can be real creative, but like with the CARES Act, it was easy because it was work from home, great, pay for it, where ARPA doesn't have that language. You know, the ARPA has that language of making facility improvements and things. So I mean, we could somehow be creative, but yet it's not nearly as clear cut in my mind.
Right. Yeah, the only thing that I've heard other IT directors around the state reference for ARPA is cybersecurity.
Yeah.
But we were pretty much set with what we've got already with that. So there were some small counties that had nothing and they were able to leverage ARPA. But that seems to be the only thing that I've seen go around that, where, you know, IT could take care of the CARES Act, no problem. But the ARPA one seems to be more out of our realm, so. So with moving to the Fund 43, because we had all the CARES Act, I usually have a 3-year plan for the Fund 43. We were able to wipe out everything in the next 4 years using CARES Act. Because that all needed to be replaced, but we were having trouble paying for it. So historically, we budgeted $100,000 in that account. Last year, it was reduced to $25,000, obviously to reflect the use of CARES funds. And to balance the budget. We have paid for large projects and it seems like it's just the sheriff's department. So I wish Jeff was here. But the Circuit RMS system was north of 400,000, was able to be paid out of the technology fund. And the squad and body cameras was north of 300,000. Obviously projects that need to be paid, you know, with net 30, very difficult to come up with that during a budget season. So the technology fund was created to pay for large projects like that. And like I said, due to the CARES Act, we were able to update the projects that are on there. And I think we had the bond refinance was able to take care of the jail camera system. So we've had a lot of different other avenues other than the technology fund to pay for large projects over the last couple of years. So the correction on your sheets, the approximate balance of December 2021 is 31,000. I think I have August of this year. So that's the approximate balance at the end of the year is the 31,000 plus the 25,000 budgeted would give us a total of 56,000. Currently, there is no projects for that money. However, we have no shortage of departments that randomly come up with stuff with that cost a lot of money. So I'm not planning to spend that down because we'd like to build that back up. So that's a quick high-level overview of both of those funds. Are there any other questions?
Question?
Yep.
Like how many, I have this problem at home, that's why I'm asking. I got a desktop sitting on the desk. It really doesn't get lost, stolen, damaged, broken, whatever. Right?
Mhm.
But you're stuck to the desk. Do you go through a lot of laptops? A lot of them get damaged just because of how they are? Like, you
Yep.
know, this thing has already been broke twice
Sure.
again this year, just because.
So inherently, a desktop versus a laptop, desktop's gonna sit on a desk for 3 years and never get moved, and it's gonna be fine. Laptops get hauled between cars, they get left in a car, someone drops it down their stairs at home. We had several of them when we first started working from home, where it seemed like someone had left the pen on their keyboard and then shut the laptop. And so then the screen's broken. So we usually are on a rotation of computers for 3 years because that's the warranty that comes with them for enterprise. So we can call up the vendor and say, hey, we have a broken computer. They'd send someone out, replace all the parts, and then the laptop's back up and running. But I'd say we probably went through 18 laptops in the last year, which is significantly more than we've ever gone through.
At that, you can reuse the docking station, of course.
Yep.
But you have the, what, $1,200 times 18, and insurance covered it usually, or no?
Yep, so that's what the warranty's for. But when we've had things that have been stolen or broken a different way, we use MCIT, our insurance provider, to go through stuff like that. So,
Don't you think that you've gone through more computers because more people were having to go home?
yes,
And-
absolutely.
I mean, there was just way more. I know I had to go home for quarantine and it was just, I had to call you because I had the desktop and then you
Yep.
had to set one up for me so that I could take it. So I'm supposed to be in quarantine and I think I was here for 2 hours waiting so that I could take work home.
Yep, we were trying really hard to get you out the door.
I know, I know. So yeah, this way you can just pack them up and go.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a lot of people that didn't really need to work remotely before that we never would have identified. Need that ability now. We never know when the next person's gonna need to work from home. So that's why the plan is to get as many people laptops as possible as their main computer, so that we're not trying to set up computers when people say, hey, I need to go home for 2 weeks. So. Because I figured this would have been over by now. So.
Right.
Any other questions?
Anybody?
Thank you, Ryan.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Let's take a 2-minute break here.
That door could do some WD-40, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, Josh, are your kids ready to go back to school?
Nope. We don't even have clothes for them.
They're in boxes somewhere.
I don't even know.
They could do distance learning.
Oh,
No.
boy.
No,
Your wife would jump
we
off.
don't have no internet either, so
Oh, so it's going well. How's the house coming along?
it's gonna be there pretty quick.
Great.
We started tiling,
Oh,
flooring is supposed to start any day.
all right. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Dad said someone was there getting water from him to get the well working. I don't know.
Oh,
You gotta-
the primer.
Prime it?
Prime it.
Oh, okay. Oh. So I don't know. That must be does the plumber get the well going?
I think the well guy.
I was gonna say typically it's the well guy.
Is it?
Sometimes it's the,
And they're
they work
supposed to,
together.
like when we drilled our well, our second well, they hooked the pump up and then they let it run for like a week
Yeah.
to flush it.
He said a couple days, he said you should run it because he goes, it'll ruin appliances and.
Ours, we had because of where we live, we have a lot of tannin in the water.
Yep.
And when we drilled our secondary well, I mean, Yeah, things were turning pink.
How deep are you digging?
I wanna say 160 feet on our secondary well.
They
I
claim the
think-
deeper, the worse the water is, right?
No,
Like it needs
The
treatment.
way they explained it to us is that that's a big lava flow underneath there. And so if as the lava was flowing, it's all the vegetation gets caught in pockets. And so you're close to one of those big pockets full of vegetation. That's why we get all that sand and crud in our well. 'Cause
when we drilled our well, I mean, our water was literally purple.
Hmm.
Because there was
Ours is
so
just
much.
brown.
We went and talked to a couple of different plumbers and they wanted us to put in a reverse osmosis. Like 10 grand.
I got one.
And then they couldn't. even-
We could run as much water as you need. Just need a storage tank. So,
But we ended up running our pump for well over a week straight.
Did it clear up then?
You know, it did, and then every once in a while, a new pocket would let loose. And then our water would turn purple again, but then we knew just to turn the water on and just let it run. And then it would just clear up.
I had Fry out this spring and clean my well. They take the pump out, run a pipe down and put his big air compressor and blow that crud out of there. It's just like, there was like 30 feet of sediment, basically, muck.
Do you have an inline filter in your house anywhere? Yeah, we do
The whole house filter. Fry was just at my house this morning. Fry was just at my house this morning. I just got a text from Jerry. It's gonna be an expensive little adventure.
Oh, no.
Maybe I shouldn't have knocked the walls out in the bathroom.
I tease him, it doesn't, you can't hardly talk to him for less than $500, you know?
Oh,
Seems like every time he comes out.
I think Roscoe was worse though.
Oh, no, Fry does great work.
Yeah.
He does that.
Roscoe was pretty expensive. Yeah, Furling, he's just a good old boy. He's
That's a lot of work, pull a pump up. And then put all the pipe back down. I was there helping him. It's like, geez.
Right, well, there's a lot of pipe that goes down in there.
Yeah, 20-foot sections that go down 160 feet. That's a lot of
Hey,
connection.
you know, when we drilled our second well, I think we got down to 17 feet and then hit bedrock. And then they had to change bits and that was pretty hard just because of where we live.
in our last house, we had a lot of tannins because we were right on the creek. And they did a chlorine deal, Culligan did. So they pumped chlorine into a brine tank and then a carbon filter to take it all out and then the water softener. And then it was pretty good, but that was $100 and some a month to do that. Now this one's 120 some feet down. I don't know what we're gonna.
Did you have a lot of rust in the other one?
Yep. Yeah, and it's stuff. After they did that, you could drink the water out of the faucet, but if it didn't work for some reason or ran out of chlorine, you knew that
You know what?
right away.
We bleached ours when we moved into this one because it's.
Okay, let's move on. Administration.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, the last bit here is a collection of kind of everything else that didn't fit somewhere else. And some of these are pretty basic pass-throughs and some of them are pretty important. So we'll start with the most important one, and that's the county commissioner budget. Really, no changes except for the per diems and the health insurance. And any questions on the commissioner budget?
I think it points out the fact that how one person or two people, I don't know how many, in a small department, just by choosing health insurance can change your budget a lot.
Mhm.
Nothing else changes. no more work gets done, no less work gets done. Just a fact of life.
No, I
All
think that's the perennial struggle in
Yep.
budgeting is.
Yeah.
The next one, central services, is the postage machine. It's just to account for that. And so it's a net zero. The county administrator budget. So we have 5 full-time and 1 part-time person captured in this budget. The part-time person is Roxanne. And then the full-time people are Jackie, Jen, Jessica, Debbie, and me. And it's pretty flat. We're adding a little bit of money for training to account for Leslie. Leslie's cost is captured in the ARPA funds for the most part. And then there's a little increase in the telephones, and that's primarily driven by, we just have more people with cell phones now because of the mobile work. So overall, the net is a 4% increase, or just almost $25,000.
As we move away from ARPA, if you look in the future, will Leslie's salary, will she remain in the administrative end, or will that, and I suppose that depends on what we do with
Yeah, I don't, so,
HRA and all that stuff.
yeah, so it's almost, in some ways, it's almost simpler if she's going to be in the general fund, just to wrap that into the administrator budget, because you've highlighted the problem of the small budget department. It's a lot of paperwork to capture one position, which, whether it's one position or 10 positions in a budget is really not
Right.
that hard. And by having some consolidation, I think it's also easier to capture the variation. So you're not budgeting, I want to say, extra on all of these line items, which has the impact of inflating the budget more than necessary. Because you're at the bottom line, the budget is an estimate of revenues and expenditures. And so to aggregate the guesses, you get a more accurate number. The law of large numbers, I think, is what I'm trying to explain. The next one is the labor attorney. That is really Margaret Skelton and the contract work that we do with her. You can see that for 2021, we've spent very little money. If we wanted to make a reduction, I'm guessing we're not going to spend $30,000 in 2022. We've got one labor agreement that's open. And we use her for some other personnel related stuff, but that usually is very minimal. So on the second iteration of the budget, this number could likely be less than 30,000. The next page is the medical examiner. I put in bold that $1,500 administration fee that did not get caught the first time around. So
We're $1,500 worse.
than we thought we were. But the second iteration will wrap that in. This has really proven to be a pretty stable budget. When we contracted with the Anoka County, prior to that, it would be based on the actual number of autopsies per year. And so sometimes you would have almost none, and other years you would have an awful lot. And so that budget number would fluctuate. This has really worked out well, where they kind of use an ongoing average, and our cost has not increased in recent years. The library. And then Pete was not able to make it this morning, but there's $10,000 in the budget for the Ag Society. And that's been constant for as long as I've been here.
It was the same as the Historical Society for many years. And somehow the Historical Society made a better case for
Oh,
more
yes.
money.
Yeah, so the Historical Society is 25,000, right? I think.
Yeah.
Needed a place to go was what that was.
Yeah.
So the fair, if they lobby that, if we can go have meetings at the fair, then.
Maybe we could put an HHW or recycling.
There you go.
Something over there.
Yeah, there you go.
The fair probably does have the capability to manufacture some revenue.
Well, now is the decontamination site, that's on fair property, or is
It's
that?
on the DNR.
Oh, that's
DNR.
DNR owns it. I
Yeah.
thought You guys own, or the fair did.
That was an ordeal. They don't. It was many hours of research of who owns that.
Oh, that land, yes.
Yes,
So what was the resolution?
The
the
DNR.
DNR owns that.
If not, they're
City
taking
owns
it, right?
some, the fair owns some.
Right. There's still some on the west side of Wagers Park that's in question.
So the parking lot then on the other side, that's still fair property, right?
Yeah, that wedge where they pile snow.
So as of now, we have not received an additional request for the fair beyond the 10,000. The Snake River watershed, that 9968 has been fixed probably since the board was formed.
I've never seen it any different, and it probably is gonna go away. So that's hopefully the plan, once one watershed, one plan. Cause
So-
Snake River Watershed Management Board will probably go away.
So I'm assuming that money goes to pay for the salary of the person who keeps everything going. So when you go to the one watershed, one plan, will that same person be the administrator of the?
She isn't now. It's the environmental person, what is it? Environmental
Services?
Services
Service,
person for
yeah.
Connecticut County.
for Caneva County, and they charge 25 grand a year. So that's just, I think that's all of us pay that, and some, all four counties pay that in some way.
So that
Yes.
money will probably stay in the pot or in our budget. It'll just go to a
I don't
different.
know if it will,
entity.
because we won't, Snake River Watershed Board will, well, the plan is to modify the bylaws so it will be one watershed, one plan policy committee. So I'm guessing the 613 will just go away.
But there'll be a funding requirement for administering the one watershed, one plans.
But that should be grant.
Should
The
be.
hope is that that's all grant.
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
And or there's a healthy reserve right there now, which we've been just keeping, because right now they don't have no grants. So we've been funding projects just out of the money right now, but that might dwindle too. But yeah, one watershed, one plan should pay for the administrative and everything, so. Not that it's $100,000, which would be nice if it was, but.
Yeah, and that split is based on the percentage of the watershed.
I think so, yeah, because they all pay a little bit different.
Yeah, and so when you had said that 25 grand, I was thinking that we pay a big share of that, but it's because we're a lot of the watershed is in Pine County.
And I think Canavix is 12,000 or something, and then the other ones are the rest, whatever. it is.
And then there's the Housing Authority. The per diems are in the county budget, and then everything else is in the Housing Authority's own budget. And then the last one is the Central Minnesota Initiative Fund. This is in essence a donation that we make every year. We've gotten out of the practice of having them present this as a budget request, and we've just invited them at some other time of the year to come over and present to the board about what the initiative fund is doing.
Which they do a ton.
Yeah, it's a pretty small investment for the return on the dollars that Pine County has gotten from them.
Yeah, just on the broadband thing, didn't they donate?
Well,
Or
25 for the broadband, and then Don,
recently, but then prior to that, to get into that Blandon deal, didn't they put a bunch on there too?
It seems like every time we want to try something new, that's who we reach
Yeah.
out to and get
Yeah.
5,000 or 10,000 or.
yeah, and I think we got pretty good service on the CARES Act grants where
Yes.
we paid them an administrative fee, but it was a pretty modest. I don't know if it was 2% or,
Right. It was, I think it was two.
A
and
lot less than what it would
yeah,
cost.
so
us.
Don certainly invested more time than he was compensated for. And then also having their online application was worth tens of thousands of dollars. So
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
so I didn't hear all of that, but it was the initiative money you were talking about there?
Yes.
Yeah, I think last year, didn't we get like $5 back for every dollar we spend or more than that?
Yeah, I
It comes
think,
back to the county in some way, shape or form.
yeah. I think you're right.
I want to say usually it's around 2 or 100 or something that actually, or 200,000 that actually comes back to the county in other forms. Maybe not necessarily to the county, but like businesses and stuff.
Business and stuff. Another thing I want to point out is our negotiating committee. And probably a dozen years ago, we used to hire this labor attorney to do our negotiations. And I believe the last year that we had that attorney firm hired, it was $165,000 to go through negotiations. So hats off to our administrative team and our negotiators.
Terry, you were probably around back when that was
Yeah,
in position and hopefully support the direction that we've gone.
yeah. We always said, why are you spending all that money on him? When there's other, yeah. Yeah. it
I
was-
just think, and Terry was on the other side of it for a while, and I just think it's part of the system that has made us a better team than
Mhm.
having an adversarial hired gun to come in and do our talking.
So that completes the budget request presentations. And so from now until September 30th, or 31st, whatever the date
30th.
is.
There's no
30th, till the end of September, the county board has an opportunity to decide upon a preliminary levy. And that levy, once it's set, cannot be raised, but it can be decreased.
Mhm.
Historically, I think the county board has set a levy without having a completely balanced budget with the idea that the gap was manageable. And so that you don't, what I'm saying is you don't have to balance the budget by September. You just have to have confidence in yourselves that you can get it to balance by the end of the year with whatever levy you set. And so in the packet, or not in the packet, but subsequent to the packet, we did distribute this levy impact worksheet that gives a little insight as to if you were to levy an amount of money, what would the impact on different properties be? And so I don't know if now is a good time to look at that or talk about that or have general conversation on the idea that we're about $1.4 million out of balance. And in my mind, there's no clear, easy way to balance that budget. If it were, $100,000 or $200,000, those are manageable numbers. 1.4 is a big number. And so it's going to take some work to get that to balance. If the board has clear preferences of things they've heard that said, we like it, but we don't think we can fund it, today is a good time to have those conversations. If there's questions about, what you heard or why you heard about something, today is a good time to ask questions about, can we get more information on something if you're struggling with where you might want to go. Does that set it up okay, Steve?
It does, and I think I'm not different than anybody else. I think about this stuff, but I appreciate the work, Kelly, that you do, because it helps me understand what I'm doing to my neighbors, and if I use myself as a typical place. And it's always interesting to me that a 3% levy increase to me is completely different than it is to Mike Sauser in his hardware store, or Chris's grocery, or pick a business. Mine is a little bit of an anomaly because my value went up 46,000. So
It's-
part of an experiment we did in our township
But
cost
that,
me money.
that's not from that anymore, because that was your
Oh.
2021. So
Okay,
this is, that 46,000, your value's going up is just because of the market value increases.
okay,
You already got hit with that $50,000
okay.
experiment,
Mine's went up almost 100,000 in 2 years,
right?
which is kind of where the market has gone, which is hard for people to swallow if they've lived in the same house for, in my case, 29 years. Didn't change a thing. I poured a new slab in front of my garage.
That was the problem.
That was the problem. I mean, my windows got older, my doors got older, my kitchen cabinets got older, and my values going up just because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that when you see a for sale sign between your house and town, and 2 days later or 1 day later, there's a sold sign on it, and then you find out that they got, they ask 150,000 more than they ever thought it was worth, and somebody made them an offer 25,000 over that. That's what has been happening in our market. So
That'll reflect next year.
I don't.
It's surprising when we're looking at our ratios though, compared to our 2022 values. For residential, we're sitting at like 92%.
Oh,
So
really?
it's not actually, our 2022 values actually aren't sitting so bad
Good,
compared to the new sales.
good.
The other thing we've kind of taken a look at over the years is our tax rate. Our tax rate is never going to be what Aiken County's is, because their tax rate is about 37%. But we've tried to keep it under 60. We haven't, it was 67 not too many years ago, I believe. So I think we've been doing better in that regard. Certainly better than if Kanabec County, and Josh always points that out to people, is if you had the same value house across the Kanabec County line, in order to raise their tax rate is about 112, I think, %. So their taxes on that same value home are lots higher than ours are.
I haven't seen one of them in a while, one of the local area tax capacities. Is that something that maybe we could get circulated? I remember looking at that always, and it just gave us the companies around.
See how the neighbors are doing?
Yeah, not that matters a whole lot, but it is what it is. It is nice to see. I think we had a tax rate close to 70% at one time, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we were bumping it.
Yeah,
So it's good to see that.
there's a potential to hit below 60,
Yeah.
but
So just, I'm just gonna blurt out my thoughts and anybody else can too. But thinking back to last week, Becky came in with a budget that was asking for a $92,000 increase on a $12 million budget. I think she can manage that. So in my mind, I've called HHS done. She's got reserve funds. She's got new reserve money coming in. She's a smart lady. I'd say that's just in my mind.
Meaning she can
She
find a
can,
place to
she can find
92,000.
92,000 either out of her reserves or something. I don't think we have to worry about her. Much of the sheriff's, or what was his total ask for an increase, a couple 100,000? And a huge part of that was asking for a lieutenant.
113.
That was the lieutenant part. What was the total increase ask?
208.
208. So these are Steve's thoughts only. We have just authorized a sergeant. He does another sergeant. He does not have that in place yet. I'd be willing to tell him to say, let's see how that works. And come back again. That takes 113 off it. So what was our?
I
total?
agree with that.
What was our total? 1.4.
1.4.
So now I'm down to 1.2. You guys do the rest. If everybody comes up with 200,000, we're down to 200. So perfect. I did the easy one. No, I don't mean to make light of that at all. I just think as we work through this and the asks that came through, if we came up with a number, and I don't know that we've got several meetings coming up here. We got a board meeting coming up a week from today. I kind of got a number in my mind of what I'm willing to do for a increase or decrease or stay the same or whatever, but I have a number in my mind where I'm kind of willing to go. And then I think it seems to have helped staff in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, but if they have a target, if we give them a target to say, this is a maximum amount of money he can spend, they've done good things and come together and made it happen.
Yeah, and that's maybe a really good point that I probably didn't make initially, is that we will follow your lead. Right? If your lead is you need to find $1.4 million, if we know that, we'll do that. If your lead is, well, we think we might do this for the levy, and here's some of our preferences on what we heard, now you go figure it out. That's a different, that's a little different scenario. So that's what I'm looking for, is what is your lead? Because we will balance the budget as best we can following your policy preferences. That makes sense?
I really hope, other than paying for people's insurance increases and stuff, that we can, we need to keep buying equipment and vehicles. Because if we kick that can down the road 1 year, now we're in not only double trouble, we're about triple trouble. Do we need, I don't know if that's, Mark is a pretty conservative budgeter. I think we've found that out over the years. he's asking for 200,000. He's probably already pared that down from, I don't know how many 100,000, but you know, I mean, vehicles cost money. But we want our sheriff to be able to, when they have to go to a scene of an accident or a crime, we want them to get there without worrying about if their wheel bearing's gonna seize up or something.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking with the CARES money and the ARPA money, so many things have already been fulfilled with that. I mean, how much really was it? How much really was needed before? And then with any balances left of ARPA, it'd be nice to look again at the list of what you can and cannot spend it on, and just to see. There's probably still there's people out there that didn't meet any requirements or didn't get as much as they needed. I would just hate to see a hit go on them at the end of it all, you know, where their taxes go up when maybe they squeak through and didn't. As a business, I know I applied for nothing, received nothing, and didn't. We were lucky enough to be open, essential. You were essential, I know. Just before we give the ARPA money back, if there isn't anything left, because you're right, if we don't use it, it goes to the feds, then it goes to California or New York.
Right. Not worried about not using it.
But I mean, just to keep this as an option for part of it, some of it, if we can figure a way.
I would,
As easy as yours were, and I agree with you with that big a budget to get 92 grand, I think that's, yeah, doable. And with piggyback on with Matt, see how the sergeant position works. I mean, that's reasonable. But even if there's something that can come out of that.
if we can buy, I don't know, can you buy extra squad cars with ARPA funds? Anybody figured out how to make that work?
Like I kind of mentioned last time, if, you know, sometimes you get a new set of eyes on it, you know, I mean, or, you know, a brainstorm session or something. I mean, when you stare at something, sometimes you don't see it. You get a new set of eyes, somebody might walk in and go, well, wow, why didn't you think of this?
The
So we can.
other thing, is it fair to say none of us are willing to go for the full 6% on it?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not willing to go that much.
and I don't know, is this where we talk about where we are willing to go, or are we gonna kind of crunch a little bit more and see if there's some low hanging fruit we can just yank off of there, or you guys have already kind of went through that, right? Or
Yes, right. I mean, I think the presentations for the most part are not made up stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, most of what we hear, there's a legitimate.
Yeah.
And so from now, you know, for the next month, I think there's a lot of room for us to reevaluate the revenues, right? Did we miss 20,000 here or 10,000 there that we think we can maybe increase those revenue amounts? It's probably, I mean, you know, it's not going to be $500,000. And then maybe they sometimes reverse downwards. And then there is the ARPA, where every day there's new interpretation of ARPA. And to the extent that we can fund legitimate things in ARPA, we're going to try to do that. And so that probably takes up some of that $1.4 million. You know, how much, we don't know yet. And then, beyond that, it's just trying to make the numbers work. And that's where on the levy piece, not that you have to decide a levy today or next week or I'm gonna say next month, but you do next month. That helps us focus on the magnitude of what we're trying to do.
is there anything?
Maybe if I could build on what JJ's saying. As people have built their budget, I know I focus on the increase that people have asked for that are eligible for ARPA. But is there something back in the building blocks of their budget that they are replacing, or they're buying something that we've missed that could have been bought with ARPA. So if you spend 50,000 on something in your department, you've got it budgeted in here, but it's not part of your increase. You know what I'm saying? Is it?
Yeah, is there
there-
base budget stuff that's?
Is there
ARPA?
base budget stuff that's ARPA eligible that would help us get to the end? I think that's, we've all done that. I don't care if you're, what you're working on.
Hmm.
Go back and look at it again and say, oh.
Yeah, you can spend out of the wrong. Fountain usually catches at the end of the year for myself. And then just one other thing, I know with Matt, with his district and mine with those unforeseen increases that these small cities are gonna have to come up with because of was it a rule change with the taxing of the,
Right.
I've still read it 3 times, I'm gonna read it 3 more. But I would just hate to see, and I think the city of Bruno was one of them that got hit
Bad.
badly. I would just hate to see, first of all, they gotta overcome that. And then anyone in that small community now go, wow, now this just was raised this much more, and I don't know how to mathematically peel that apart and look at it. Just how big an impact that's gonna be, first of all, what just happened to them a few weeks ago, and then now
Right.
you put this on top of it, or
So I'm kind of wanting to go back and add a couple city of Bruno parcels to this list. Because the one thing with the city of Bruno that just off the top of my head is the fact that their values really from year to year don't hardly change. It's not a place people are clamoring to get into. So the good news is I'm gonna guess that even if we did a 6%, which I know we're not doing, but even if we did a 6% levy increase on the county levy, I'm gonna guess it's not gonna have a huge impact to those people in Bruno, just because their values are so stable. But I can go back and add some of them on this list. Just to give everybody a heads up on what JJ's referring to. So power lines throughout the state, they're taxed 2 different ways. One is you look at them in what township or city do they live in, or are they located in? And they get taxed or get the taxes they pay is based on whatever township, city, school district they're in. So there's another set of power lines that gets taxed at the county-wide average rate. And that rate is just looked at as literally what's the average tax rate in the county. However, then since it's not specific to any township or city, the townships and cities don't get anything from those. Here, just for your reference, those are Z parcels.
Not mine.
So this year, the Department of Revenue realized that the distribution lines in city limits, the guidance previously that they had issued said that they should be taxed at the local rate. So they should be taxed at the township or city rate that they're located in. However, they realized that that's not what the statute says. The statute says that they should be at the county-wide average rate, which for many, many areas isn't a big deal. I mean, the city of Pine City, it means nothing for them. However, the city of Bruno, for example, it's over 20% of their tax base that now is gone. The city of Carrick, Ascove, and Denham are the other ones that are very impacted. And so it's been months of going back and forth with the Department of Revenue, making sure this is really what you mean. And so finally, the final ruling came down just a couple weeks ago. And so I've reached out to those cities to try to work through that. Because in theory, if they levy exactly those cities levy, what they've been levying, like the city of Bruno, everybody in the city of Bruno city taxes will go up 22% without them raising it all. I'm working with those cities, trying to come up with some solutions. That is, I mean, you could look at it as a loss of revenue, and could we fill some of that with ARPA funds for a short, I mean, you obviously can't do it forever, but you could do it for a short time to phase it back in or something.
That it's it's a change in the tax capacity more than a revenue. Because they're
Right.
they're, in 2021, they collected X on their property tax.
Right, and they still could collect
Yeah.
X in 2022 on their property tax. However, it would create a huge financial burden.
Shoots, but there's a caveat in the law, right, that prohibits states, but maybe not local governments.
And
from-
I think we can make a case on how it could work, just for with those ARPA funds, because it's such a huge chunk of, I mean, you could almost look at it as money that's no longer available because of the change.
Is it safe to say then a business has property in that city that they're tax exempt kind of then for that city? They don't pay this, I mean, they lost 21%, they lost.
The power line, right.
Right.
So like, I don't know, the city of Bruno has a huge substation. I don't know what they have there that was such a huge value in the city of Bruno, but yeah, I mean, it's located there, but now the way that the statute's written and the correct interpretation of the statute is that it gets taxed at the county-wide rate. I'm assuming because it benefits everyone, not just the city of Bruno.
Yeah, I could, maybe when we're done, we could. look at it
Yeah.
A little better. I could maybe
It's a-
explain to you and then with everything that you know.
Right, it's a
that I
hard
know, we can
change.
come together and
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear on this is how the statute was written, just that the guidance we had previously received was not that.
yeah, see, because Carrick has a substation, Haskell has a substation,
Okay,
Bruno doesn't.
okay,
So if you just look at dollar value, a lot of it doesn't make sense.
yeah. And like Bruno, I mean, it's a $1.6 million of value. So I mean, it's not a huge amount of value, but yet when you're the city of Bruno and you have 100 tax parcels,
Yeah, right.
that ends
right.
up to be a lot. With
Yeah.
the average value of your other parcels at like $70,000. So,
Right.
And they're really conservative with their.
right, their levy's like $20,000 a year.
So I wonder if we can take a lesson from the power line case that was just decided, that there's a huge state bailout for all of those communities.
Mhm.
If there's a legislative fix that would say, hey, if you're willing to bail out those counties, why aren't you willing to bail out these cities, which in total is probably not.
I mean,
whole lot
it's
of
a
money.
really small amount of money in total, but to those individual cities, it's a large amount of their levy. So,
So they took 20 whatever percent from Bruno and gave it.
well, it ends
County?
up getting now split between the county and the school district, and the school district is actually who ends up to be the big winner in it all. Because the part that we get is very similar to what ours has already been about half of the taxes anyways.
Is the bottom line amount of money that the utility pays changing much? Or is
Not
it, it's
much.
just the
Just the
distribution?
distribution that changes. So there's that whole piece as well.
So,
A
the-
layer on top of the complex property taxes as well.
so you're saying that within the county board's power is the ability to change that countywide rate. That would be changed, or that would be
Right.
charged.
So if you owned a bar in Bruno, and based on what other businesses are seeing from the county side, your taxes would go down. It'd be interesting to see what the net effect is.
Well, right, and Bruno, just for example, yeah, the bar convenience store, it's all nice outfit to have there. Then, of course, you got the gas station across the
Right.
street. You have the post office, which is, I believe somebody privately owns that and leases it. And then you have the big one up there, the research.
Right,
Yeah, I think that's about it in town
that's
for,
about it. They got about 4 or
Fee.
5 places paying taxes.
yeah, just to see the impact with that
It might
new
not,
situation.
might not be. I don't know how big, what did you say? Their whole levy is 20 grand?
Right.
just on the commercial side, then of course you got, yeah, the rest, everything else, residential and, but it was just such a big hit for them compared to.
How big was the hit for Denham?
9%.
If it goes to the school district, then, I mean, with open enrollment, I see 4 school buses going by my house in Sturgeon Lake. So how do they know? Do they count
Goes to
the
the
kids?
school district of the residents.
Just, okay. East Central.
Central and below. Get it?
Oh, city, yeah, I guess
Just
city of
Denham
though.
is up- where would they go to Willow when they- or would they go to Moose Lake? Denham.
So,
Yeah.
does everybody want to mull this over for a few days? I think staff will make themselves available if you have questions on things like that, that I wasn't aware of till today. Our objective here is to keep the county running and keep everybody running, you know, pay that.
It's hard because most of it's employees.
Yeah,
You know, we have to have the.
got to thread the needle.
Kelly,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a 2019 report from the League of Cities that shows Bruno's tax rate. And at 40.65 compared to the county average rate of 67.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? It seems like, so how do they lose so big? I had just assumed they had a really high rate.
No, but because, so their entire tax capacity, let's say, is $200,000.
Or 88,270.
Okay, approximately. I'm using round numbers. Okay, so $100,000, but now we've taken 20,000 of that from them because that power line is no longer part of their tax capacity. So it's gonna skyrocket their tax rate if they leave their levy the same.
Oh, so that 40% will go to 60 or 70%. All right. It's an answer for everything.
One thing that we haven't talked about, which was an ad, and maybe we talked about it last time, was the ag educator. I don't know if people had thoughts on that, going from
Yeah,
0.5 to
didn't
1.0.
Go for the, we had talked about, now that it's not Rod, I know that we were talking about going higher so that we could keep Rod because he needed more. But we were talking last time about if we just stayed at 0.5 and we were possibly still gonna be able to share them with Isani. And you were gonna reach out.
Yep, and I did reach out to Julia Lyons, the Isani County Administrator, and she is going to follow up. They had not had any, they didn't even know that he was leaving.
Oh,
And so I've talked to Suzanne and they're in, so Isani County is in a different region. And so they have a different regional director. So she was going to follow up with that other regional director and Julia was going to follow up with their extension committee. And so there's work being done, but I had proposed that we would have a preference of continuing to split the position if there was an interest on their part.
Well, and that really doesn't matter. It doesn't. Because if however we want to fund it, the university will fund it, or they'll figure out. And like they've said, if they got a good candidate that wants full-time, they will figure out how to get them full-time. If they, so what we really looked at was we could pretty much bump to a 3/4 for, it was a few $1,000. So bump up their time to 3/4, which like Suzanne says, that gets them to benefits level.
Mhm.
Now, if the person wanted full-time, there's a bunch of other stuff they can do for the university to get their position, that's what we're gonna fund is whatever. So, so I wouldn't worry so much about that if we gotta share with whoever.
I think another thing we should explore is we take what we pay to contract for a master gardener. We put that on top of a 3/4 position. Now we got 100% position, and I don't think we're paying university a whole lot more than we're paying now.
Mhm.
And maybe not any more.
And I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here in that if we're trying to close a $1.4 million gap, I would maybe suggest that we could save some money if we kept it at a half time. And that way the service level does not decrease. Because we're really tugging against things like the fleet maintenance money
Mhm.
to stay away from staff, right? That the new positions that are in the budget are pretty few.
Mhm.
And so to find any money is gonna be hard.
No, and that's where, like with that halftime, if it stayed there, it's not the end of the world.
And I would just maybe co-op, Josh, the point you made about if we tell extension that we want to maintain it at a half time, they have a lot of ability to figure out how to staff that position and give us a 0.5. And either it's just a part-time position or it's a full-time position and they'll find the other half-time to fill it.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, obviously we'll work with them, but
and they will get a good candidate. It won't be a, a part-time, whatever, it won't be a McDonald's worker, I guess, is what I'm saying. They'll get you.
They worked really hard. I just.
Yeah.
talked to her the
Yeah.
other day and she said that they had a position out and she said, we just didn't, our candidates weren't good enough.
Yep.
So it's back out
Yep.
till they get the right person. They work really hard to get the right.
for the success of that position, I think the sooner that extension knows the direction that we want to go, the less of a break in service there'll be.
So do we want to just tell them to stick with 1/2 then?
Yeah, I don't know if we do it now or we do it later. But
I don't-
it's better that-
I think she figured if we knew by the time we set our preliminary, they would be fine with that. So I don't think it'll really help right now or make much difference.
But it would help us to know where we're at.
So here's my takeaway is after today, I would make the numbers, or Kelly would actually make the numbers reflect that it would be a half a time position at the proposed rate that extension gave us, which is likely a decrease in total dollars from 2021.
I say we do that, then I came up with my money.
No, that's only about 30 grand.
Oh, that's, oh, shucks.
It's, I look at the sheet that I just, because of the way somebody has figured it out, we're not gonna change it, but if you go to the 3% or 2% levy increase line, and you look at Walmart is getting a $6,000 increase, and you go up to my property, 59 other people are gonna have to pay $102 increase to make that just break even.
You know, for so many years, commercial has paid for everything that, to see them going down, it's kind of a job breaker for me. Because I don't think I've seen that for a long time. So what happened that made it so that commercial went down that much?
Well, it's because the commercial values stayed so stable where the residential, those house values popped up so much.
Okay.
So you've got just that tax shift of
Mhm.
the residential, the houses are now more of the percentage.
Do you know what residential versus, well, what percentage of our levy does commercial pay? Do you know that?
I don't know.
Okay.
We
I could
have a
figure it
chart
out.
though, that we use at the TNT meeting that shows that, so we can update that chart.
Okay. I was just curious. Do you think it's half?
No. It's
Not even
less.
close?
That's one of the problems we have, Josh. I think in our counties, we don't have that commercial property tax base. And when you have a lot of ag homestead
Yeah.
and homestead places, the homestead get whacked
Yeah.
hard.
So there's not any seasonal in here. What happened with seasonal properties? Are they?
They're very similar to the res properties. I guess I don't have anything on a lake here. But I tried mine across. And even Sturgeon and those, their values went up.
What does, what department, or where would the forestry, who do they fall under? They fall under.
The land department.
Land department. And what was the changes in that for, does that stand flat or no increase or?
Right, it stays pretty much the same because that's not paid for at all with levy dollars. That's only paid for with land sale and timber.
So they're wholly funded by
Right,
timber and land.
sales. There's no levy dollars there.
Is there somewhere, is there a breakdown on that somewhere in here that I overlooked?
Yeah, we got that.
It was in with Kelly's.
Yeah,
note
back
at the
on
first
that.
meeting.
August.
That was last week.
Yeah, there's not really. Because that's not in my presentation because it has no levy dollar association. That's in, I did my presentation at the August 17th board meeting. And so those sheets were there.
Okay.
So it's not really easy to read, but
Oh.
this is the value from the 2021 budget. And so you can see residential 1.5 billion versus commercial and industrial at 193 million. And so the kind of the ratio of the values.
Yeah, and egg is high too.
Yeah, ag is high.
Our industry is ag instead of the other, um,
But if you figure seasonal is kind of a, not commercial, but it is kind of a, I mean, that is a business kind of deal. I mean, that's just non-residents coming in and jacking you up a lot, quite a bit, if you look at it. So residential pays about a little less than half.
Well, this is the value, we need to do the tax
Yeah.
capacity chart to be able to draw that conclusion. It's so hard to talk about the property tax without sounding like you're trying to misdirect.
Well, because commercials and seasonal is all taxed on a different rate as
Well,
well.
seasonal's the same as residential
It
at
is.
1%.
Oh, okay,
But it
commercial's
pays the state tax.
yeah, okay.
so this is the 2021 value for taxes payable in 2022.
I think this is just 2021 straight payable,
Oh, okay, okay.
because this is from last year's TNT, right?
I believe it was.
It's hard to.
But the breakdown stayed pretty.
And so maybe just to compound it, right, when you look at the change in value, it was residential that had the highest percentage increase last year. And this number it'll likely be the lead this year as well.
What do you think, Matt?
That's a good question.
I think I'm ready to mull this over a little bit. I've
Yeah.
seen Bree shaking her head. I think we'll all have questions and we'll all call David and Kelly and say, what did, I heard this, but I didn't understand it. 'Cause I do that 3 days later, right?
Well, even at that 6%, we're under the need on all the asks. Right?
Yeah.
No, Steve found his.
Yeah,
He
not
got
after
us.
Steve's cut, it's
Yeah.
straight cut.
Yeah.
So we have a special meeting, committee of the whole, scheduled for the 14th at Nematchee. So in my mind, that would be like the next logical place to have a conversation. The agenda for the board meeting goes out tomorrow. So that we wouldn't be able to turn anything around. If you wanted a discussion on the agenda for next week, we can certainly do that.
I think next week, David, we'll just, if somebody has questions, we can do it under other. Otherwise, we won't have we'll save our discussion. And I don't know if we can come to a conclusion in one meeting of where we want to set the levy. At some point, we're going to have to take a vote and set the levy at a number, because we levy in dollars and then somebody else does the calculation and figures out the percentage. But that's kind of, at some point, we got to set that preliminary levy. A lot of entities don't want to do the hard work in the beginning, so they set their preliminary levy high. That's what all the calculations are done when you get your little sheet of paper or in the mail. And then if you set it at 10%, everybody gets all cranked up, and then you're gonna end up at 2 anyway. Might as well do the hard work between now and the next couple of weeks. Get it done.
So if we wait till the committee of the whole meeting in September, is that going to give enough time? If we say this is the number that we want, that dwindle down and determine where it's going to go? Or is that pushing it?
I think I'm gonna be working on things between now and then as well.
We can set our levy in 1 day's notice, as long as it's before the end. We might not have a balanced budget by that day, which we've done before, but the earlier we kind of give an indication to the staff of where we're headed in a levy, the easier it is on everybody.
And so in my mind, the natural schedule would be the follow-up conversation on the 14th. And then the regular meeting on the 21st is where you would set the preliminary levy. And if on the 21st, you didn't feel like you could do that, then we'd have to set a special meeting for that following week. But I'm always skeptical that we'd have some great awakening in that last week that would say, oh, now it's clear.
But like you said, we can decide what we want to do. The budget might not be balanced, but we don't have to vote on a budget till the end of the year.
Yeah, all you're voting on is your confidence in your ability to balance the budget within the levy you set.
Yeah.
So when we do Nemadji, we're not going to be able to do Zoom meetings, correct?
That is correct. There will not be an electronic component to the Nemadji meeting.
Matt, do you think that you'll be able to be at Nemadji?
You okay? Were you saying something to me, Terry?
Yeah, do you think that you'll be able to be at the next special meeting up at Nemaji? Because we won't be able to do Zoom.
I didn't get all that. Hang on here. Hang on.
I could talk into this. Does that help?
Go ahead.
Do you think you'll be able to be at the next committee of the whole meeting that's going to be held up at Nemaji? What is the date? September 14th?
I would love to be because I don't like this process for me at all, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, because we will not be able to do Zoom at that meeting. I'd rather have him there if we're going to talk budget. Just,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the downside about meeting in these other places is the technology is not reliable.
Right.
And we just know firsthand with Becky Laurie on video conferences that she's been on, that her connection is particularly not reliable. And then also, you know,
You think I can be home for the 14th?
it's, are we doing it with a laptop? Or are we asking Ryan to pack up the rally system and move that?
right.
Because it's portable, but it's not really that portable.
Would we want to consider moving that meeting back to the courthouse?
With him too, I mean, Matt will have a good sense of to tell us what he'd like to see too, I think. I mean, we're not setting the budget, so we're just doing the preliminary.
Mhm.
So it's not, if he can't make it, we can figure it out. So I think anyways.
I think so.
So he'll voice to the chair or to David or to Kelly.
We will not set the levy until our second meeting in September.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, anything else people want to talk about?
I'm keeping this one.
If not, we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.